Welcome, dear friend, to a quiet corner of our channel, and thank you, with all our heart, for choosing to spend this peaceful part of your day with us. We've carefully prepared a story for you, one woven not just from words, but from stillness and light, designed to be a gentle companion as you prepare for a night of deep and restorative slumber. If, as our tale unfolds, you find a measure of comfort and quiet joy within it, please do consider, just bore you set your device aside, lending your support by liking this story and subscribing to our channel, and perhaps leaving a soft word in the comments, for it allows us to continue crafting these havens of tranquility for all who might need them. Before we meet the weaver and listen with our whole being to the gentle threads of his sleep song, we shall first take a moment to breathe together, settling both body and mind. Now, let us find a true and simple comfort. Allow yourself to settle, much like a fallen leaf finding its final perfect resting place on a bed of soft moss. Feel the gentle support of your mattress and pillows, a comforting foundation that holds you completely, allowing every part of you to feel safe and wonderfully heavy. You might pull your blankets a little closer, a soft cocoon of warmth against the cool night air. This is your time, a quiet moment set aside from all others, where the concerns of the day may be gently released, like little boats set adrift on a slow, quiet stream, allowing a deep and peaceful calm to settle in your heart, as profound as the ancient silence of the Vale itself. Let us now share a soft and easy breath, like the slow, contented sigh of the valley at dusk. Gently, without any effort at all, draw the air in through your nose, imagining it as a cool, silvery light filling you with a quiet and clean stillness. And then, just as softly, release it through your mouth, a warm and almost silent stream of air. With each easy breath, feel your body growing heavier and softer, releasing any small tensions you might have been holding in your shoulders or your jaw. Imagine the clean, cool scent of moss after a rain, the faint, sweet perfume of chamomile, and the deep, earthy smell of ancient, peaceful soil, all helping to quiet the lingering echoes of your day. If you find your thoughts begin to wander, like little dust motes dancing in a beam of soft light, that is perfectly fine, dear one. There is no need to do anything at all but notice them, and then gently, so very gently, guide your attention back to the simple, steady rhythm of your breathing, or to the peaceful cadence of my voice. There is nothing else for you to do now, save for listening and allowing the story to be your gentle guide into the deep and restful sleep you so richly deserve. Feel the hum of ancient stones, a vibration of pure peace, coaxing your own body into a state of profound relaxation. Now let us begin our quiet journey into the heart of the Vale, where the weaver of the sleep song awaits to spin a tapestry of tranquility just for you. Chapter 1. The first thread of silence. It is a curious thing about the beginnings of truly quiet places that they are often not marked on any map a person might carry in a satchel. Lorien, who had made a gentle life of finding and charting such spots, knew this better than most. He stood now at what he felt must be the entrance to the Vale of Somnus, a place he had only heard of in hushed tones and read of in the margins of forgotten books. There was no gate, no sign, not even a change in the trees. The only marker was the silence, a sudden and profound quality in the air, as if he had just stepped through a curtain woven from stillness itself. The distant call of a bird, the sigh of the wind in the far-off pines, all of it simply ceased. It was not an empty silence, but one that felt full and ancient, a deep and peaceful presence that seemed to welcome him in. He took a step forward and then another, his worn leather boots making almost no sound upon the path. The ground here was different, a thick and springy carpet of the darkest green moss he had ever seen, which seemed to swallow the sound of his footfalls entirely. The air, too, held a new texture against his skin, cool and soft, carrying a scent he could not quite place, something clean and earthy like damp soil, yet mingled with a faint herbal sweetness, like chamomile flowers warmed by a sun he could not see. He felt a long-held tension in his shoulders, a knot he had not even been aware of, begin to gently, slowly unfurl. It was the kind of peace that one does not simply find, but is invited into, and Lorien felt a quiet gratitude bloom in his chest. The path, if one could call it that, was merely a suggestion of slightly more trodden moss, winding its way between gentle, sloping hills that rose on either side like sleeping green giants. They cupped the valley in a soft embrace, sheltering it from the winds and whims of the wider world. The light here was wonderfully strange. Though the sky above was a clear pale blue, the light that reached the valley floor was diffused and gentle, as if filtered through 1,000 unseen leaves, casting no sharp shadows. Everything was bathed in a soft, even glow, making the vibrant greens of the moss and the dark, solemn gray of the occasional boulder seem richer, deeper, and somehow more real. He walked for what felt like a very long and very short time, his sense of the world outside the veil already beginning to fade, like a half-remembered dream. The silence was his only companion, a steady and reassuring weight. It was in this peaceful state that he first saw it, nestled at the base of one of the hills. It was a small cottage, so perfectly a part of the landscape that he almost missed it. Its walls were made of the same dark river stone that dotted the valley, and its roof was not shingled or thatched, but was a living, breathing dome of the same thick moss that covered the ground, making it look as though the hill itself had simply grown a doorway. It was the sort of dwelling one imagines badgers and other kindly creatures might build for themselves. A single thin curl of pale, almost white smoke rose from a stone chimney, a silent, friendly greeting against the soft sky. It was a promise of warmth, of a hearth, of a gentle welcome within. It did not disturb the stillness, but seemed to be a part of it, a quiet announcement that life existed here, but it was a life lived in harmony with the profound quiet. Lorien felt no hesitation, no uncertainty, only a gentle pull toward the rounded, moss-covered door, a feeling of coming home to a place he had never been before. He approached the door, which was made of a single smooth slab of dark wood, its surface worn as soft as velvet by time and gentle weather. There was no handle, no knocker, only a small, smooth indentation for a hand. He paused for a moment, listening. He could hear nothing from within, not a single sound, and yet he could feel a sense of peaceful activity, a gentle hum of being that was not heard with the ears, but felt in the bones. It was the feeling of a well-tended garden or a sleeping cat, a contentment so deep it needed no expression. With a soft breath, a quiet exhalation that mingled with the valley's serene air, Lorien placed his hand into the smooth hollow of the door. The wood was not cold, but held a surprising neutral warmth, as if it were alive. It swung inward without a sound, opening into a space of soft light and even deeper quiet. He stepped across the threshold, leaving the path behind, and felt the last vestiges of the outside world simply fall away, like a heavy cloak he had not realized he was wearing. The first thread of the sleep song had been woven around him. He found himself in a single large circular room, the air within even warmer and more comforting than that of the valley. A small gentle fire crackled merrily in a stone hearth across the room, its light dancing on the curved stone walls and the smooth, dark wood of the floor. The source of the smoke he had seen. It was a fire that gave off a pleasant dry warmth and the faint, reassuring scent of burning oak. The entire space felt like a warm, safe burrow, a nook carved out of the very heart of tranquility. And for the first time in a very long time, Lorien felt his journey was truly over. Chapter 2: The Hum of Gentle Things. In the center of the warm, round room sat a simple wooden table, and beside it, in a sturdy chair of polished willow, sat the valley's caretaker. He was an old and timeless being, with a long, pale beard that seemed to drift more than it hung, and eyes the color of the moss outside, deep and full of a quiet, knowing light. He looked up as Lorien entered, and a small, gentle smile touched his lips. There was no surprise in his expression, only a simple, patient welcome, as if he had been expecting him all along. He made no sound, but gave a slow, deliberate nod of his head, a gesture that was both a greeting and an invitation to come closer. This, Lorien knew, must be Phelan, the weaver. Lorien gave a small, respectful bow of his own, feeling that words would be an intrusion in this place of profound quiet. Phelan gestured to the other chair at the table, a twin to his own, and then to a small, earthenware pot that was warming by the hearth. The simple kindness of the gesture was as clear as any spoken language. Lorien moved across the room, his footsteps soft on the wooden floor, and sat. The chair seemed to cradle him, its smooth, curved back a perfect support, The warmth from the fire was a gentle balm, and the steady, near-silent crackle of the logs was the only sound in the room. Phelan rose from his chair with a movement that was incredibly slow and yet utterly fluid, like water flowing over stone. He took 2 simple hand-thrown clay mugs from a shelf and, using a padded cloth, lifted the warm pot from the hearth. He poured a steaming pale golden liquid into each mug, the fragrant steam rising to fill the air with the comforting scent of honey, meadowsweet, and something else, something gentle and calming that Lorien couldn't name. Phelan placed 1 mug on the table before Lorien, his hands steady, his movements a small, perfect ritual of hospitality. Lorien wrapped his cold hands around the mug, its heat a wonderful and immediate comfort. He took a small, tentative sip. The tea was warmth and sweetness, and the taste of a summer meadow, a gentle magic all its own. He looked at Phelan, who had retaken his seat and was holding his own mug, his gaze directed toward the fire, a look of deep, peaceful contentment on his ancient face. No words were exchanged, for none were needed. There was a companionship in this shared silence that was more profound than any conversation, a simple, mutual appreciation of the warmth, the quiet, and the comfort of the moment. The next day, Lorien awoke on a soft pallet of straw and wool blankets, feeling more rested than he had in years. The fire had been banked and was already cheerfully crackling once more. Phelan was not there, but the door was open to the soft light of the valley. Lorien stepped outside, the cool, clean air a refreshing greeting. He saw Phelan a short distance away, engaged in his gentle work. The old caretaker was tending to the valley's most curious inhabitants, strange twisting vines with silvery green leaves and large, dark, perfectly smooth stones that lay half buried in the moss like the sleeping eggs of some great, gentle beast. Lorien watched, fascinated, from a respectful distance. Phelan moved among the great stones, each as tall as his waist, with a soft, clean cloth. He polished their surfaces in slow, circular motions, a task performed with such mindful deliberation, it seemed more like a meditation than a chore. As he polished, Lorien became aware of a new sensation. It was a hum, a deep, resonant vibration that was so low it was felt more than it was heard. It seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, a steady, calming thrum that settled deep in Lorien's chest, a peaceful and grounding bass note to the valley's silence. After tending to the stones, Phelan moved to the vines. These woody, ancient plants coiled up the trunks of the few trees in the vale and along the gentle slopes of the hills. Their leaves, even in the daylight, seemed to possess a faint, internal luminescence, a hint of stored light. Phelan did not prune or trim them, but simply ran his long, gentle fingers along their length, brushing away a stray dead leaf here, adjusting a tendril there. It was a gesture of quiet affection, of a gardener tending his dearest friends. Lorien watched this slow, peaceful dance of care and felt the hum of the stones and the sight of the silvery vines begin to merge in his perception. The day passed in this state of quiet observation. Lorien did not feel the need to do anything, only to be. He explored the small circumference of the valley, his every sense awake and alive. He touched the cool, springy moss, breathed in the clean, earthy air, and felt the constant, soothing hum of the resonant stones. He was not a visitor here, he felt, but a student, learning the language of stillness from a place that spoke it perfectly. As evening approached, casting long, soft shadows, he knew something more was about to be revealed. He felt it in the air, a gentle anticipation, as if the entire valley was holding its breath, waiting for dusk. Chapter 3. The Woven Light. As the last sliver of the sun's direct light vanished behind the soft curve of the western hill, the valley began its transformation. The sky above bled into gentle shades of lavender and a deep, soft indigo, and the air grew cooler, carrying the damp, sweet scent of approaching night. Phelan emerged from the cottage and gave Lorien a small, knowing nod, beckoning him to follow. He led him not far, just to a small natural clearing in the center of the vale, a place where the resonant stones were clustered most thickly, and the lumen vines coiled in a dense, beautiful tangle around the base of an ancient, gnarled oak. They sat together on the cool moss, their backs against a low, smooth boulder, and simply waited. And then it began. It started with the vines. A single leaf on a low-hanging tendril began to glow, not with a harsh or sudden light, but with a soft, internal pulse of silvery blue. A moment later, another leaf answered it, and then another and another, until the entire network of vines was breathing with a slow, hypnotic rhythm of light. The glow was soft and ethereal, casting no sharp shadows, but bathing the entire clearing in a gentle, magical twilight. The light rose and fell in a silent, perfect cadence, like a slow, deep, contented breath, and it cast dancing, dreamlike patterns on the mossy ground and the dark bark of the old oak. With the first pulse of light, the hum from the resonant stones seemed to deepen, its vibration becoming more pronounced. Lorien could feel it clearly now, a tangible thrumming that resonated up from the ground, through the boulder at his back, and into his very bones. It was a steady, grounding frequency, a feeling of immense, ancient peace. The hum was in perfect harmony with the pulsing of the light, the two elements weaving together seamlessly. The rising swell of the hum matched the brightening of the light, and as the light softened, so too did the vibration, creating a symphony of silent, sensory music. This was the sleep song. Lorien understood it now, with a clarity that went beyond thought. It was not a melody for the ears, but a tapestry for the soul, woven from these elemental threads. And there was more. As the light and hum found their rhythm, a new scent began to grace the air. It was the delicate, impossibly sweet perfume of the noctis petals, small 5-petaled white flowers hidden amongst the moss, which, it seemed, only opened their faces to the night in the presence of this gentle magic. The fragrance was the final thread, a high, sweet note of pure contentment that completed the composition. Lorien sat in stunned, peaceful silence, completely enveloped by the experience. The soft, pulsing blue light was a balm to his eyes. The deep, steady hum was a weight that settled his body and quieted his mind. The sweet scent of the flowers was a simple, pure joy. He felt the threads of this sensory song weaving around him, through him, becoming a part of him. It was a lullaby sung not in notes, but in light, vibration, and fragrance, a direct communication of peace to the deepest parts of his being. He watched Phelan, whose eyes were closed, a look of serene bliss on his face. The old caretaker was not directing this phenomenon. He was simply a part of it, another instrument in the orchestra of the Vale. He was the weaver, not because he commanded the elements, but because his very presence, his long ages of quiet care and attention, had allowed this harmony to flourish. He had tended the garden, and this was its beautiful, nightly bloom. Lorien felt a wave of profound gratitude wash over him, for Phelan, for the valley, and for the quiet path that had led him here. He closed his eyes as well, focusing not on seeing, but on feeling. He could feel the soft, physical warmth that emanated from the glowing vines, a gentle heat that was like the touch of a comforting hand. He felt the steady, reassuring thrum of the stones in his chest, a rhythm that seemed to coax his own heart to beat more slowly, more steadily. He breathed in the sweet perfume of the noctis petals and felt it travel all the way down to his lungs, a breath of pure peace. His mind, which had already grown quiet, now became utterly still, a placid pool reflecting the silvery blue light of the vines. The world outside this small glowing clearing ceased to exist. There was only the gentle rise and fall of the light, the deep and steady hum of the stones, and the sweet breath of the flowers. It was a perfect, self-contained universe of tranquility. Lorien did not feel sleepy in the conventional sense, but rather that he was entering a state of wakeful rest, a deep and meditative calm where thoughts were unnecessary and being was enough. The song was not putting him to sleep, but was instead teaching him the very nature of rest itself. He remained there for hours, seated beside Phelan, lost in the gentle symphony. Time seemed to dissolve, the moments blending one into the next in a seamless flow of peace. The boundary between himself and the valley blurred. He could feel the hum within his own body, see the soft light behind his closed eyelids, and taste the sweetness of the air on his tongue. The weaver's song was not something he was listening to anymore. It was something he was becoming. Chapter 4. A Tapestry of Stillness. In the days that followed, a new and even deeper quiet settled over Lorien. The stream of his thoughts, which had first slowed to a gentle current and then a still pool, now seemed to have evaporated entirely, leaving only a serene and cloudless sky within his mind. He no longer felt like an observer in the Vale, but a part of its gentle, living fabric. His movements became slower, more deliberate, unconsciously mirroring the unhurried grace of Phelan. A simple act, like picking up his mug of morning tea, became a small mindful ritual, its warmth and weight something to be fully experienced. One afternoon, he found Phelan sitting beside the largest of the resonant stones, a great, dark dome of a thing that hummed with a particularly deep and soothing vibration. The old caretaker was not polishing it today, but simply sitting with it, one hand resting gently on its smooth, sun-warmed surface. Phelan looked up as Lorien approached, and with a small, inviting smile, patted the mossy ground beside him. Lorien sat, mirroring the old man's posture, and tentatively placed his own palm flat against the stone. The sensation was immediate and profound. It was not just the familiar, steady hum, but a feeling of immense, grounding weight and a gentle, pervasive warmth that seemed to flow directly from the stone into his hand. The warmth traveled up his arm, settling in his chest like a warm coal, a feeling of absolute stability and peace. It felt as though he were touching the very heartbeat of the world, a slow, ancient, and unworried rhythm. He closed his eyes, breathing in the clean, earthy scent of the stone and moss, and felt any last lingering tension within him simply melt away into the ground. He and Phelan sat there for a very long time, in a silence that was rich with unspoken understanding. There was no need for conversation. The stone spoke a language of its own, a language of stillness, patience, and deep, abiding calm. Lorien felt the boundary between his own quiet heart and the stone's steady hum begin to dissolve. It was as if his own pulse were slowing to match its ancient cadence, his own being attuning itself to this fundamental frequency of peace. The experience was more restorative than any sleep he had ever known. Later, as evening began to draw its soft gray cloak over the valley, Lorien found himself helping Phelan with a simple task. A gentle breeze, a rare occurrence in the sheltered vale, had scattered a few dried brown leaves across the clearing of the noctis petals. Phelan was moving slowly through the area, his keen eyes spotting the errant leaves against the dark moss. He would bend with that same fluid grace, pick up a single leaf, and place it in a small woven basket. Lorien began to do the same, his eyes learning to see the small patches of brown that did not belong. The work was meditative, requiring a quiet focus and a gentle touch. Each leaf he picked up was feather light in his palm, its texture dry and delicate. The scent of the damp earth rose up to meet him as he bent close to the ground. He worked alongside Phelan, the two of them moving in a slow, silent, and harmonious ballet of care. There was no sense of chore or duty, only a simple, satisfying rightness to the act of tending this peaceful place. He was not just a guest anymore. He was contributing his own small thread of gentle action to the valley's tapestry. When the last leaf was cleared, they sat once more to await the evening song. As the first lumen vine began its soft silvery blue pulse, Lorien felt it differently. Before he had been an audience, now he felt like a part of the orchestra. The light seemed to emanate, not just from the vines, but from the very air around him. The hum of the stones felt like it was rising from within his own chest. The sweet scent of the unfolding noctis petals was a fragrance he breathed as if it were his own native air. He was completely and utterly interwoven with the peace of the place. He looked at his own hands, resting on his knees in the soft magical light. They seemed calmer somehow. The hands of a map maker, used to charting and measuring, now seemed content to simply be still. He had come here seeking a place of ultimate quiet, a destination to mark on a map, but he had found something else entirely. He had found that true stillness was not a location to be found, but a state of being to be inhabited. It was not a place without sound, but a place where every element existed in perfect, gentle harmony. He no longer thought about the world outside the veil. It was not a conscious decision, but a simple fading away of things that no longer mattered. His past felt like a story about someone else, and his future was a concept too busy and loud for this quiet space. There was only the present moment, the soft, pulsing light, the deep, resonant hum, the sweet air, and the feeling of utter, unshakable peace. He had become a living part of the tapestry, a thread of human stillness woven into the greater pattern of the valley's deep and gentle rest. Chapter 5. The Song Within. Lorien awoke not to a sound, but to a feeling. It was a sensation of profound lightness, of a quiet, settled joy that seemed to emanate from the very center of his being. He opened his eyes to the soft, gray light of dawn filtering into the cottage. The fire in the hearth was now just a bed of glowing, orange embers, pulsing with a gentle warmth that reminded him of the lumen vine's light. He lay still for a long moment, simply experiencing this new state. The quiet of the valley was still around him, but now it was also within him. The deep, resonant hum of the stones was no longer just a feeling in his chest. It was a quiet, steady rhythm that felt as natural as his own heartbeat. He rose from his soft pallet, his movements feeling effortless and light. He walked to the open door and looked out into the vale. The morning mist was gathered in the low places, a soft, white blanket from which the tops of the resonant stones poked like smooth, dark islands in a sea of clouds. The air was cool and clean and carried the scent of damp moss and wet stone. A profound sense of gratitude filled him, so deep and quiet it needed no words. He knew with a certainty that was as calm and solid as the stones themselves that his time here was complete. He had received the gift he had unknowingly been searching for. Phelan was standing by the door as if he had been waiting. The old caretaker held out a small, smooth, dark stone, no bigger than a robin's egg. It was one of the resonant stones, but a tiny one, worn perfectly smooth by water and time. It was cool in Lorien's palm, and he could feel a faint, gentle vibration emanating from it, a tiny echo of the great song of the valley. Phelan looked at him, his moss-green eyes full of a warm and gentle understanding, and gave a slow, deliberate nod. It was not a gift of magic, Lorien understood, but a simple reminder, something to hold that would help him recall the feeling of this place. The farewell was as quiet and simple as the greeting had been. Lorien placed the small stone carefully into his pocket, its smooth texture a comforting weight. He bowed his head to Phelan, a gesture of deepest thanks that went far beyond what any words could convey. Phelan returned the gesture with his own small, knowing smile, a look of peaceful benediction. There was no sadness in the parting, only a sense of rightness, of a cycle completed. Lorien turned and walked toward the unseen path that would lead him out of the valley. As he walked, he felt the presence of the Vale all around him, a final, gentle embrace. The moss cushioned his every footstep. The soft, diffused light seemed to guide his way. He could still feel the deep hum of the great stones, a vibration that seemed to wish him well on his journey. He did not look back. He did not need to. The valley was no longer just a place on a map. It was a part of his own inner landscape now. He reached the invisible boundary, the curtain of silence, and with a single step passed through it. The sounds of the outer world returned, but they were different now. The distant call of a bird was not a noise, but a small bright thread of music. The sigh of the wind in the pines was not a disruption, but a gentle breath. The world had not changed, but his way of hearing it had. The silence of the Vale had taught him how to find the peace within the sound. He stopped and reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around the small, smooth stone. He could feel its faint, steady vibration, a quiet pulse against his skin. It was a promise that the peace he had found was not lost simply because he had left the place where he had found it. The sleep song was no longer a symphony he had to travel to hear. The weaver had woven its threads into the very fabric of his being. He continued on his way, his steps light, his heart calm. He was still Lorien, the quiet map maker, but his maps would be different now. He was no longer just charting the quiet places of the world. He was carrying one within him. The hum of the stone in his pocket was a quiet companion, a steady and reassuring presence, and he knew, with a deep and simple joy, that wherever he went from this day forward, he would always be able to hear the soft, gentle, and unending music of the sleep song. The peace was his to keep.